we bring you the unvarnished truth of law enforcement. This broadcast features unfiltered, unedited, and completely raw footage. Join us as we step onto the front lines of justice, providing a transparent view of the critical moments that shape our society.
Show me your ID, now.
For what reason? Are you on
Don't
duty?
get smart, you're causing trouble.
I'm seated. You're touching me without cause.
Police business, stay out of it.
Say it on camera, you're arresting me with no authority.
The water was calm that night, dark glass broken only by the slow ripple of passing boats. String lights stretched along the railing of the waterfront bar, casting warm reflections across polished wood and half-full glasses. Music drifted low just enough to blend with laughter and clinking ice. At the far end of the bar, a black woman sat alone on a high stool jacket draped over the back, nursing a drink she had barely touched. It was a rare pause. No briefing, no report, just quiet. She felt him before she heard him. A shadow fell across the counter. A man's presence too close, too deliberate. She turned her head slightly and saw the badge clipped to his belt. The posture that came with it, shoulders back, chin lifted. He was out of uniform, but the authority stayed on him like a second skin. "What are you doing here?" he asked. She blinked once, surprised more by the question than the tone. Enjoying a drink, she replied calmly, "Is there a problem?" He laughed, short and humorless. "This isn't really your scene, is it?" He gestured vaguely at the bar to view the crowd. People around them went quiet, in small pockets, attention drawn without intention. She set her glass down carefully. "Are you working right now, officer?" she asked. "Or just drinking?" That question flipped something in him. His smile disappeared. "Don't get smart with me," he said. "You need to show me some ID. Right now." "For what reason?" she asked. Her voice stayed level, noticed now by the bartender who had stopped wiping the counter. "I haven't done anything." The man leaned in closer, close enough that she could smell alcohol on his breath. "I'm asking you because I can," he said. "You don't belong here causing trouble." A couple near the window turned in their seats. Someone at the end of the bar lifted a phone pretending to check messages. The air changed thick with the sense that this was no longer casual. She reached into her bag slowly, deliberately. "I'll show you identification," she said. "But you should know who you're talking to." He waved her off. "I don't care who you are," he snapped. "You're getting loud. You're getting confrontational." "I'm sitting down," she replied. That was when his hand moved to her arm. The bartender finally spoke. "Hey, is everything okay over here?" The officer didn't look away from her. "Stay out of it," he said. "Police business." She felt the weight of the moment settle in her chest, familiar and unwelcome. She had spent years investigating men who thought a badge made them untouchable. She had written reports about scenes just like this one from the safe distance of evidence and sworn statements. Tonight she was inside it. And as phones around the bar lifted higher, the officer made a choice that would follow him the rest of his life. The confrontation at the bar was not random. It was the collision point of two histories that had been moving toward each other for years. Her name was Naomi Turner, 40 years old, a federal investigator assigned to a joint task force focused on public corruption and civil rights violations. Her work lived in sealed files and late nights tracking patterns most people never saw. She interviewed victims who spoke in fragments. She reviewed body camera footage frame by frame. She built cases quietly, knowing that attention ruined investigations long before court ever did. Off-duty, Naomi kept her life deliberately small. No announcing her job, no leaning on credentials. She dressed plainly, blended easily, and chose places where she could sit alone without being noticed. That bar by the water had been recommended by a colleague months earlier. Good music, low light. Nobody asked questions. The man who approached her carried a different record. Officer Brian Caldwell had been with the department nearly 11 years. On paper, his evaluations were solid. On the street, his reputation was sharper, aggressive when drinking, overfamiliar when off-duty. Quick to remind people he was a cop even when he wasn't working. Complaints followed him in clusters, usually after nights out. Disrespect, unnecessary stops, comments that crossed lines but never seemed to stick. Supervisors called it stress. Coworkers called it personality. No one called it what it was. Caldwell believed authority did not end when a shift did. He wore it into bars, into arguments, into spaces where it was neither required nor welcome. He was used to people backing down when he flashed a badge or raised his voice, especially women, especially black women. Resistance irritated him. Calm resistance enraged him. When Naomi asked whether he was on duty, she wasn't challenging him. She was clarifying a boundary. To him, it sounded like disrespect. When she asked for a reason, he heard defiance. When she stayed seated, he saw refusal to submit. Naomi recognized the pattern instantly. She had documented it in other cases. The slow escalation, the manufactured justification, the moment when harassment became enforcement because someone needed to feel in control. Two professionals trained around the law. One tasked with restraining power, the other accustomed to wielding it without question. They met at a bar where neither should have mattered. Only one of them would walk away with a career intact. And neither of them knew yet how many cameras were already recording what came next. Caldwell did not let go of Naomi's arm. Not tight enough to bruise yet, just enough to assert control. The bartender froze hands mid-air, eyes flicking between the badge and the woman being held. Music kept playing absurdly cheerful while the bar around them thinned into a quiet ring of attention. "Ma'am," Caldwell said, raising his voice now. "You need to calm down. You're causing a disturbance." Naomi looked down at his hand, then back up at his face. "I am sitting still," she said. "You are touching me without cause. Let go." A man 2 stools down stood up halfway. "Hey man, she hasn't done anything." Caldwell shot him a glance sharp enough to cut. "Stay out of this, police business." Someone near the patio door lifted a phone, fully no longer pretending. The red recording light reflected faintly off the bar mirror. Another patron whispered, "He's off duty." A woman answered, "That doesn't matter to him." Naomi felt the shift in the room. This was the part she knew too well. The part where witnesses appeared and authority hardened instead of backing down. She kept her hands visible on the bar. She did not pull away. "I am asking you again," she said clearly. "What legal authority are you acting under?" Caldwell laughed again, louder now, performing for the room. "You hear that?" He turned slightly so others could see his badge. "She thinks she's a lawyer or something. You want to keep pushing this? I can take you outside." "Take me outside for what?" Naomi asked, asking questions. The bartender finally stepped closer. "Officer, if there's a problem, we can handle it." Caldwell snapped back without looking. "I said stay out of it." He tightened his grip and tugged Naomi's arm just enough to force her off the stool. Chairs scraped. Someone gasped. A phone clattered to the floor and was scooped back up, still recording. Naomi landed on her feet, steady but unmistakably moved. "Do not do that again," she said louder now, voice carrying. "You are not on duty. You are harassing me." That word flipped something in him. "Harassing you," he said. "Now you're making accusations." He reached for his cuffs with his free hand. "You're disorderly. You're intoxicated. You're refusing to comply." "I have not refused anything," Naomi said. "I have asked you to stop touching me." The crowd pressed in closer. The patio door opened. Waterfront lights spilled across the floor. Someone shouted, "This is on camera." Another voice answered, "Let her go." Caldwell's jaw clenched. He looked around, eyes darting, calculating. The room was no longer passive. The control he expected was slipping, so he did what he always did when questioned. He escalated, and the choice he made in that moment would not end at the edge of the bar. It would follow him into a courtroom, and then into a cell. The moment snapped the bar in half. Caldwell yanked Naomi's arm back toward him and spun her away from the counter. The stool tipped and crashed to the floor. Glass rattled. The music cut abruptly as someone near the sound system reached over in shock. The room filled with noise that had nothing to do with the band. "You're under arrest," Caldwell shouted. "Disorderly conduct." For a fraction of a second, everything slowed. Naomi felt the cold metal of the cuffs touch her wrist before they closed. She did not resist. She did not raise her voice. She turned her head just enough for the cameras now pointed directly at her. "I am not resisting," she said clearly. "You have no lawful reason to arrest me." Caldwell ignored her. He forced her hands behind her back and tightened the cuffs another notch. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the crowd. Someone yelled, "She didn't do anything." Another voice followed, "He's drunk." The bartender stepped forward again and was shoved back with an open hand. "Back up," Caldwell snapped. "Police business." Naomi was marched toward the patio doors, shoes scraping against the wood floor. Phones followed every step. Faces blurred past her. Shock, anger, fear. The waterfront lights outside burned bright as the doors swung open. On the deck, the night air hit hard. Boats drifted by, oblivious. Caldwell pushed her toward the railing, still narrating loudly for anyone recording. "She's intoxicated. She's causing a scene. She refused lawful orders. Naomi stood upright, balanced despite the pull on her arms. I asked you to stop touching me, she said. That is not a crime. Caldwell leaned in close, voice low, now dangerous. You should have known your place. That sentence landed heavier than the cuffs. A woman nearby shouted, That's racist! Another patron stepped between Caldwell and Naomi instinctively and was shoved aside. The situation was unraveling fast, no longer contained by authority or fear. Sirens sounded in the distance. Someone had called it in. Uniformed officers arrived minutes later, confusion written across their faces as they took in the scene. Caldwell launched into his version, immediately talking fast, pointing at Naomi. One of the responding officers glanced at Naomi, then at the phones still recording. He asked quietly, What exactly did she do? Caldwell hesitated. That pause was enough, because everything before it had been captured. The approach, the grip, the insults, the escalation, the arrest. Naomi stood cuffed under the string lights, calm in a way that unsettled everyone watching. She met the eyes of the arriving sergeant and spoke evenly. I am a federal investigator, she said. And this man just committed a serious crime. The bar went silent again, and this time the silence did not protect the officer. The truth broke through in fragments, each one harder to deny than the last. The responding sergeant asked Caldwell to step aside. Caldwell protested, voice sharp, insisting he had the situation under control. The sergeant did not argue. He asked a single question instead. Are you on duty? Caldwell hesitated again, then muttered, No. That answer changed everything. Naomi was uncuffed quietly, the metal opening without ceremony. Her wrists were red but steady. She adjusted her jacket and spoke to the sergeant in a tone that carried authority without volume. My name is Naomi Turner. I am a federal investigator assigned to a civil rights and public corruption task force. I am requesting preservation of all body camera footage and immediate separation from the individual who detained me. The sergeant's posture shifted. He nodded once. Understood. Around them, phones kept recording. Someone replayed a clip aloud. Caldwell's voice saying, You should have known your place. Another video caught his hand on her arm at the bar the moment he pulled her off the stool, the shove toward the patio. The evidence stacked itself in real time. Backup supervisors arrived within minutes. Then Internal Affairs was notified. Caldwell was told to surrender his badge. He laughed at first, a short disbelief sound. When no one laughed back, the smile disappeared. At the station, the narrative collapsed completely. Security footage from the bar synced perfectly with bystander video. Audio was clear. No disorderly conduct. No intoxication. No lawful order given. Just harassment, escalation, and force. Caldwell's earlier complaints were pulled. Similar language, similar settings, similar outcomes that had never reached this point. Naomi gave her statement once. Calm, linear, precise. She did not editorialize. She did not speculate. She let the footage speak where words were unnecessary. By morning, the department placed Caldwell on administrative leave. By afternoon, the district attorney opened a criminal investigation. By the end of the week, federal prosecutors joined it. The charges were not symbolic. Civil rights violations under color of law. Unlawful arrest. Excessive force. Witness intimidation. Each count carried weight. Each count carried time. Caldwell's attorney tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. A bad night, alcohol, stress. The videos rejected every excuse. The language was clear. The intent was visible. The pattern was undeniable. Naomi returned to work quietly. She did not speak to the press. She did not need to. The case moved forward on its own momentum, powered by what had already been seen. Months later, in a courtroom filled with footage and silence, the verdict came back guilty on all major counts. The sentence followed. Years in federal prison. The bar by the water reopened the next day like nothing had happened. Glasses clinked. Music played. Boats drifted past. But one man's career ended there forever, and one woman's calm refusal to disappear turned a routine act of harassment into a landmark reckoning. The fallout did not slow once the cuffs came off. It accelerated. Within days of Caldwell's arrest, federal prosecutors convened a grand jury. They did not rely on Naomi's status. They relied on footage timestamps, witness statements, and Caldwell's own words. The case was built the same way Naomi had built dozens before it. Methodically, relentlessly, without emotion. The indictment was unambiguous. Acting under color of law while off duty. Deprivation of civil rights. False arrest. Excessive force. Witness intimidation. Prosecutors emphasized one detail repeatedly. Caldwell invoked police authority where none existed. He used a badge to coerce compliance in a private setting. That distinction turned misconduct into a felony. The defense unraveled quickly. Caldwell's attorney argued stress, alcohol, a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. The jury watched the videos instead. They heard the tone shift. They saw the grip tighten. They replayed the sentence he never should have said. "You should have known your place." That phrase followed him through every motion and every objection. Former colleagues testified reluctantly. Some admitted they had seen similar behavior before. Nights where Caldwell pushed boundaries, comments brushed aside as jokes, complaints minimized to avoid paperwork. Each testimony widened the scope. This was not an isolated lapse. It was a tolerated pattern that finally met resistance on camera. Naomi testified once. She did not describe fear. She described sequence, time, distance, touch, language, authority asserted without cause. She answered questions the way she always did. Precisely, without embellishment. The jury did not need more. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all major counts. The judge spoke longer than expected at sentencing. He addressed the room directly. A badge is not a weapon. Authority is not entitlement. When an officer uses the power of the state to humiliate and restrain without cause, the harm extends beyond the victim. It erodes public trust. It demands punishment. The sentence reflected that. Multiple years in federal prison. Caldwell did not look at Naomi as he was led away. She did not look back. The case file closed with the same finality as any other she had worked. Evidence logged, outcome recorded. Pattern interrupted. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. Naomi walked past them without stopping. Justice had already spoken, and this time it spoke loudly enough to be heard everywhere. What happened at the Waterfront bar was not an unfortunate encounter. It was a textbook civil rights crime. Police authority is not a personal asset that follows an officer into private life. When an officer is off duty in a private establishment without a call for service, their powers are no greater than anyone else's. They cannot demand identification. They cannot detain. They cannot touch. The moment Caldwell invoked his badge to control Naomi, he stepped into federal criminal territory. The law is explicit. Acting under color of law does not require a uniform or a patrol car. It requires the assertion of official authority. Caldwell did exactly that. He used his status to intimidate, restrain, and arrest without cause. The fact that alcohol was involved did not mitigate the crime. It aggravated it. Intoxication while asserting police power compounds liability. It does not excuse it. The escalation followed a familiar psychological pattern. Harassment framed as questioning. Questioning reframed as defiance. Defiance punished with force. When witnesses appeared, the behavior did not stop. It hardened. Cameras did not deter him. They challenged his sense of dominance. That is why the situation exploded instead of de-escalating. Naomi's response mattered. She stayed seated. She kept her hands visible. She named the violation calmly and clearly. She did not insult or provoke. She did not resist. She allowed recording. Those actions did not prevent the arrest, but they preserved the truth exactly as it happened. Evidence does not need emotion. It needs clarity. For viewers, the lessons are precise. Off-duty officers have no special authority in private spaces. You may ask if they are on duty. You may ask for the legal basis of any demand. You may refuse unlawful orders. You should not physically resist, but you should speak clearly, stay visible, and allow recording. Witnesses and video change outcomes. For departments, the message is unavoidable. Tolerating off-duty misconduct is not containment. It is incubation. Patterns ignored become crimes prosecuted. When supervisors minimize complaints and excuse behavior as personality, they create defendants, not officers. The prison sentence did not come from a single bad decision. It came from a system that allowed harassment to masquerade as authority until it met someone who knew the law and a room full of cameras. The final question is not why Caldwell went to prison. The question is how many similar encounters end quietly because the person targeted lacks witnesses' footage or the confidence to name what is happening. This case ended differently because power met evidence, and evidence does not back down.
Seeking the truth is our ultimate mission. We dig deep to hold power to account, relying entirely on facts and data. Remember, the records never lie. Thank you for tuning in and supporting our work.